Crew members on the set of Alec Baldwin's film Rust reportedly used his prop gun for target practice with live ammo the same day before the gun ended up misfiring. Somebody with knowledge of the movie set told The Wrap that it happens pretty often, something like that.
And there's this pastime that crew members sometimes do. It's called plinking, and they go out into the rural areas and they shoot at beer cans. This is with live ammunition. We learned that this happened the morning of the day that Helena Hutchins was killed in the early afternoon.
Let's talk with Scott Coscia. He is a stunt coordinator and armorer, as well as, hi Scott, a former New York police officer, so I'd assume that you know your stuff here. So if plinking did happen that morning, what was supposed to happen between the time that a crew member may have been using that to shoot beer cans or whatever?
Hi, Robin. Thanks for having me on. First of all, there should never be target practice on a set. Honestly, if there are weapons, you should not have live ammo, and blanks should not be in the same zip code. Plain and simple. Just irresponsibility all around.
Is that a normal practice, though?
I've never heard of that. I mean, I haven't been in the I've been in the business about 12 years. I've never, ever heard of crews target practicing with the weapons they're going to bring onto a set. This is negligence if I've ever heard it.
Yeah, and the scene apparently required Baldwin to shoot. He was pointing apparently in the direction where the camera ended up being, and so he was practicing that cross shot, that cross pull from across his waist there. But normally, what would happen? You'd line up your shot, and then you'd retreat to a video area.
So if they're blocking or doing a rehearsal, what I usually do is I give talent what's called a red gun. It's just a reddish orange piece of plastic that can't be confused with a working firearm. It has no moving parts, and the talent is going to be able to simulate whatever movements they need to do. And then when we need the prop gun, then I will fly it in. I will hand it. It goes from me to the talent. Nobody else touches my weapons when I'm on a set.
So from what you've been able to hear then about what was happening on the Rust set, what's your impression?
I'm absolutely floored. It seemed like it was the perfect storm of things going wrong. So many safety protocols were just not ever put into place. And I'm going by what I hear being reported in the media and what I'm seeing in social media production groups. People, reporting secondhand what they've know from people who are on the set. I've never seen anything like this in all my years in the industry. Never have I ever seen anything like this.
Is there formal training or a degree or some standards for armorers in the industry? What does it take to be an armorer?
To my knowledge, no. A lot of guys just have a federal firearms license, and that allows them to modify weapons. I've gotten into arguments on social media, and actually I taped CNN yesterday, and I had somebody who I'd never even met before call me just out of the blue. He got my number, called me, and told me that, well, we do things very differently on the West Coast. And I'm like, how do you do things differently on the West Coast? Well, we don't always use modified weapons. So any of the weapons I bring onto a set are modified. They cannot chamber a real bullet. You could not load a real bullet into it if you wanted to. Yeah. And if somehow you managed to wedge that bullet in there and pull the trigger, the weapon would probably blow up in your hand as opposed to actually discharging a round.
So is it up to you as the armorer to decide what kind of weapons will fit what the script says? Is that up to you?
You kind of work with a director and the producers, and you read the script, and then you kind of try and get into the character's head. What kind of gun would that character have? Are they a police officer? Is this an Old West kind of scenario? And then you choose depending on availability, what's available, whether it's your own private stock or it's from a rental house.
What about the people who say, well, live weapons, or real weapons, not live, but real weapons are used as opposed to fake or toy ones or set ones, so that there is a reality to what is being filmed? Like whether it's recoil or a flash or what have you.
Right. So most of the weapons I bring on set are actual weapons. They've just been kind of modified in a way that you can't put a real bullet in it. No matter what you do, you can't put a real bullet in it. So It's my understanding, and I don't understand this practice. Some guys use their own privately owned unmodified weapons, so they're bringing guns onto set.
Okay.
And I've been called paranoid. I've been called nervous. I've been called clueless because I've questioned this practice. It seems like one of the first things we need to do is stop this practice. I know I'm going to probably get a lot of flack because of this. I think this practice is ridiculous. As we see what happens when a real weapon is in the hands of an inexperienced armorer, what can happen?
Thank you so much, Scott Coscia, for sharing some of your experience here and some of your insight as well. I appreciate it as we continue our reporting on what happened on the set of the movie Rust. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Robin.
I have to move
Thanks,
to. Yeah, thanks, Scott. Now, producers said that they were not aware of any official complaints about weapons or prop safety on that set. Production on the film is shut down indefinitely right now. The assistant director who handed Baldwin the gun that day had been let go from a movie in 2019. The studio behind that film says that was after a gun unexpectedly went off and injured a crew member. HLN legal analyst Joey Jackson. Good morning to you. So, hi there. Does the info about the assistant director being let go previously impact the focus of the investigation at all?
Yeah, Robin, good morning to you. Everything will be looked at, and I think this is multi-layered. Obviously, the sheriff right now is conducting a thorough investigation to determine whether there's any criminality. The second step, of course, is the movie production company itself will be evaluating what they can do to be safer and better. I think the third layer would be the industry as a whole needs to determine what they can do better for safety. And I think you'll also see, Robin, legislative efforts and safety measures potentially being legislated. To your question, the core of it is if you know someone has a past history where they were careless, that puts you on notice so that you have to, if you're hiring them, take extra precautions. Were they adequately and appropriately trained? Were they in the position they should have been doing in the first place? Were they careful in that position? And so all of that will be evaluated, but to know that this person had this past history and to let them, be in charge of something so critical, again, is highly problematic, and that's an understatement.
Yeah, and then there's questions of, well, isn't an armorer supposed to be the person that's in charge of those things and handing them to an actor, or who would that be? Would it normally be the assistant director? And his name, by the way, is Dave Halls. Any responsibility for Alec Baldwin because he is named as a producer? And I guess that would be liability, rather.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, when you say the liability, we have to distinguish between civil liability and criminal responsibility. Alec Baldwin being the person who fired the shot, of course, but in any job, Robin, you reasonably rely upon those around you as a team to do their individual part. Now here you have, I think, civil liability as it relates to money, which is never enough to compensate when someone dies, right? But then you look at the issue of criminal liability, and I think it's kind of worlds apart. It's very difficult to establish that. But at the same time, if Alec Baldwin, as a producer, certainly has a responsibility to ensure a safe, a reasonable, a set that people can come to and be protected and certainly not die. So that could open him up to civil liability, but criminal liability may be far different at this point, depending upon what the sheriff's determination is and the other investigations that are ongoing.
Joey, thank you so much. HLN legal analyst Joey Jackson.